Following Robinhood's decision to prevent retail stock traders from buying shares of stocks that had been shorted by hedge funds, Representative Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez spoke out, tweeting the following. "This is unacceptable," she writes. "We now need to know more about Robinhood's decision to block retail investors from purchasing stock while hedge funds are freely able to trade the stock as they see fit. As a member of the Financial Services Committee, I'd support a hearing if necessary." She also continued to tweet, "Inquiries into freezes should not be limited solely to Robinhood. This is a serious matter. Committee investigators should examine any retail services freezing stock purchases in the course of potential investigations, especially those allowing sales but freezing purchases." That was her way of essentially signaling that it's not just Robinhood. You have other apps like TD Ameritrade is also restricting the buying of certain stocks. So she wants them to be held accountable. She wants investigations. There's currently a class action lawsuit filed against Robinhood for what they've done. But all of a sudden, slimy Senator Ted Cruz decides to slither into this conversation to pretend as though he's a man of the people. And he, of course, quote tweets saying that he fully agrees. He fully agrees with AOC. And so is AOC interested in maybe joining forces to do something about this? Not with Ted Cruz. Not with Republicans like Ted Cruz, and for a very specific reason. She responded by saying, "I'm happy to work with Republicans on this issue where there's common ground, but you almost had me murdered 3 weeks ago, so you can sit this one out. Happy to work with almost any other GOP that aren't trying to get me killed. In the meantime, if you want to help, you can resign." Some pretty strong words. I also want to mention that Ted Cruz's wife, Heidi Cruz, works for Goldman Sachs. So after serving at Goldman Sachs for 7 years, Cruz was promoted in 2012 to regional head of the Southwest United States for the investment management division in Houston. So either Ted Cruz is full of crap, which I think is true, or he just really hates his wife, because this is now the second time he's publicly snubbed his own wife.
Well, that it's funny that you would mention that, Anna, because I was about to say AOC right there is essentially the opposite of Ted Cruz, sucking up, we'll say, to Donald Trump after calling his wife fat and ugly and saying that his dad killed JFK. Like, this is the opposite of what Ted Cruz did when faced with somebody who blatantly went against him, and obviously in their role with what happened at the Capitol. Like Ted Cruz again, like I feel like this is the second time in a row I'm on here to talk about this dude. He is just a blatant fraud, right? And and I guess he likes to piggyback on things and try to seem, because every Republican has to try to fake like there's some everyman, because part of the rhetoric of the Republican Party is anti-elite. Even though again, Ted Cruz is like a Harvard, Yale, Princeton dude, right? Clerked for a Supreme Court judge. Like he is the definition, he's the elite of the elite of the elite, right? If you're a Republican, you're not a real Republican if you don't do that kind of lip service. But yeah, AOC actually has integrity. Like if you pay attention to what she's been doing her entire career, short as it may be, she stayed on message and on brand. And obviously, this is a classic example of the little guy completely getting screwed over. So it's obvious what side she's gonna be on. Ted Cruz is just a phony.
Yeah, I see him as someone who tries to ride a popular wave for his own political benefit. But when it comes to the fundamental issues that lead to the kind of inequality that we're seeing in this country, he's been part and parcel of that. Like he's been a big proponent of the types of policies that lead to inequality in the United States. And by the way, AOC is absolutely right. Remember, Ted Cruz was one of the first Republican senators, along with Josh Hawley, to raise his hand and say that he was going to challenge the Electoral College votes for Joe Biden. And all of that, unfortunately, snowballed into all these provocations that led to the Capitol riots. And AOC is furious about it, and she should be. She's also furious that House Minority Leader Kevin McCarthy refuses to hold anyone accountable in the House for some of the threats that they've engaged in. You have QAnon conspiracy theorists in the Republican Party now who have engaged in social media comments, basically advocating for physical harm against certain Democratic lawmakers. And so in a recent interview, Representative Ocasio-Cortez brought that up, and I wanted to share that with you. Let's look.
There are legitimate white supremacist sympathizers that sit at the heart and at the core of the Republican caucus in the House of Representatives. And when you see someone like the House Minority Leader, Kevin McCarthy of the Republican Party, respond to white supremacist vitriol coming from his own members, not with censure like they did with Representative Steve King of Iowa, not with being stripped of committees, not with any consequence, you have to wonder who actually has that power. And it increasingly seems, unfortunately, that in the House Republican caucus, Kevin McCarthy answers to these QAnon members of Congress, not the other way around. And so when I hear that Representative McCarthy is going to pull a member aside who has made white supremacist sympathizing comments, the thing that I think is, what is he going to tell them? Keep it up? Because there are no consequences in the Republican caucus for violence. There's no consequences for racism, no consequences for misogyny, no consequences for insurrection. And no consequences means that they condone it. It means that silence is acceptance, and they want it.
I mean, she's absolutely right. It doesn't seem like McCarthy has any interest in rooting out some of the toxicity that we experienced during the Trump administration. Like, Trumpism is here to stay. Trumpism is just something that, unfortunately, it's the mutation of the Tea Party, and the fact that his response to like Marjorie Taylor Greene, and the fact that just like a year or two ago, she was engaging in like awful, violent rhetoric on social media aimed at Democratic lawmakers, he doesn't even want to hold her accountable for that. He's like, I'll talk to her. Yeah, what are you gonna say? It's so infuriating, and I don't know if there are going to be any consequences. At this point, I'm not expecting anything to happen.
You know what's so funny about this? The sad irony is that these Tea Party, QAnon, Proud Boy adjacent type of Republican Congress members are what the squad and progressives on the Democratic side aspire to be, essentially influential, right? Like AOC is somebody who, if she were not as talented as she is, so obviously is, and gained the following and engendered the love that she has out in the world amongst progressives who aren't in her district, like she's made herself into a national figure who has to be reckoned with. Nancy Pelosi would marginalize her like that quickly.
I mean,
like,
she has. Yeah.
Right. And so, Nancy Pelosi can actually go get the ruler and spank her the way the nuns in my old Catholic school used to do, okay? She can actually do that. They can't do that on the other side. Those guys are not on the fringes anymore. They were. They're not on the fringes anymore. They are in power. They represent a power structure within that party. So you can't just elbow them out and sort of little bro them and say, hey man, you gotta fall in line. No. You don't get to tell me what to do. I have power and agency within this body. So go kick rocks, Kevin McCarthy. You can cry all you want. And you know what I love too, Anna, the other day I saw, my lady, because she doesn't follow politics quite as closely as we do, but she follows enough. And she's like, man, can you believe the Koch said they're not gonna support the insurrectionists? I'm like, the Kochs invented the Tea Party. What are we talking about? I'm supposed to rejoice in that? They literally made this stuff in the lab, talking about grassroots campaign and all of that. They were the financial might behind the Tea Party. The people who started this sort of stuff, this sort of backbiting.
Yes, the Koch brothers co-opted the Tea Party. The initial message of the Tea Party was actually all about the like financial inequality that we're seeing in this country. And then the Koch brothers were like, we need to get involved, right? And so they got involved with the money and did succeed in changing the messaging from, I think something that some on the left can agree with to, no, we need tax cuts and deregulation.
Right, and deficit hawks. They love talking about the deficit. We can't help. We got to be austere. The deficit is going to eat our children in their sleep. No, we got to do that. Tea Party.
Yep.
Thanks for watching the Young Turks. Really appreciate it. Another way to show support is through YouTube memberships. You'll get to interact with us more. There's live chat emojis, badges. You've got emojis of me, Anna, John, JR. So those are super fun. But you also get playback of our exclusive member-only shows and specials right after they air. So all of that, all you gotta do is click that join button right underneath the video. Thank you.